Chairman of the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission for 8.5 years, and continues to serve as president of the International Association of Transportation Regulators. So I'm going to call him up now.
Thank you. Thanks, Penny. I'm from Brooklyn, so I'm going to talk real loud so people outside can come in. Thanks, Penny, and Camille and Nadia, and especially Penny's done a great job, I think, for sure, putting this together. It's a great program, and this is a really easy task for me to introduce my friend of, it could be 20 years, Ray Martinez. I first met Ray right after 9/11, actually, or a little bit before it, actually, when I was TLC commissioner, and the TLC and the city administrations really didn't have a great relationship with the Department of Motor Vehicles in New York. And for the first time, we actually had someone who picked up the phone, who would come to meetings and would be responsive, and he went well beyond that. And he just owned the job, did, I think, a fantastic job at DMV. And then, after the Pataki administration left office, a lot of those folks ended up going across the river to our brothers and sisters in New Jersey, working for Governor Christie as the New Jersey Motor Vehicles Commissioner. And, a lot of people know Ray in the motor vehicle world, but his experience goes well beyond that. I mean, in between, he worked, for Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, and he worked for various administrations going well back in time, and as well as the Attorney General. So he's got a broad base of experience, not just as a lawyer, but as an expert in motor vehicles and a tried and true public servant. I feel that maybe in my lifetime and 20 plus years in government, can count on one hand the number of people that I think I could find nothing bad to say about and have gone above and beyond and just really have all the integrity, good manners and the ability to get things done. It's very hard to find, believe it or not. And Ray is just one of these public servants that I think, while eventually he will probably leave at some point, I think we'd love to have a guy like Ray stay in office forever. He's a true epitome of a public servant that we want in office, somebody who administers fairly, listens to people. He's made tremendous reforms and progress at New York State DMV and also in New Jersey. And I think when we talked about, with Camille and Penny, who should be our keynote speaker, one of the conversations we had, well, this is a sustainability program, right? DOT and NYSERDA are very gracious in helping host this program, but someone who teaches sustainability, the car is inevitably there. You can't avoid it. And I thought it would be great if we could have someone like Ray, whose worlds are now colliding. It used to be that the Motor Vehicles Commission was this entity that just licensed people. And now there's all sorts of technology and environmental protections with the inspections and I&M programs. And now you got folks like Uber, cutting deals with manufacturers to do autonomous vehicles. And there's a little problem. There's a vehicle and traffic law that says you need to have a steering wheel on a car. Well, we may not need that anymore, and I think all these different worlds are colliding: ground transportation, autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, and motor vehicle commissions could end up being in the lead on these issues. And, like we're involved in the UTRC with ITR, he's a very active member in the equivalent entity known as the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. He's a board member there. So he's going to share with us today not just his perspective, since we're a bi-state, actually tri-state entity, right, or country entity, New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. He's had the pleasure of serving two governors, currently in New Jersey and also in New York, and really, for purposes of the UTRC, provide a great perspective, but he's also going to talk about his national perspective and international perspective. I know you're going to have a good time listening to Ray. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce my good friend, Commissioner Ray Martinez. Thanks for coming. Good seeing you,
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for letting me join you today at this conference. I'm very interested in this topic. I want to thank Matt, of course, for his kind words. I'm glad that he didn't go through my entire resume because when my father hears it, he says it sounds like I can't hold a job. But it is, I was commissioner in New York, I'm commissioner in New Jersey, and I'm kind of working my way down the East Coast. And Matt, I look forward to your invitation next year. Hopefully the conference will be in Puerto Rico. This topic is really interesting to me, and I can tell you that it is interesting to all of the motor vehicle commissioners around the country. I'm proud to represent New Jersey today, but I am a native New Yorker. I grew up in the Bronx, and I lived in Manhattan for many years, and divided my time between Manhattan and the state capital in Albany when I was commissioner. So I try to get back to New York City as often as possible. I'm proud to tell you that today I did do some eco transportation. I live on the shore in Jersey in a community called in Monmouth County, Port Monmouth, and I was able to walk to my ferry, took the ferry across, and then took the bus, and then walked another 10 blocks before it was drizzling. And that ferry, by the way, didn't exist 10 years ago. It does now, and it's just another way, a better way for people to commute from that area. And what that has allowed that area to do is to develop more, and more people are able to commute into Manhattan that way, including my wife, who does that every day. The commute today for me was a little bit different than when I lived in New York. When I lived out on Long Island and drove to Manhattan every day on the Long Island Expressway. I don't know why I did that. That is a painful memory. My commute today from where I am in Monmouth County, New Jersey, to Trenton is about 120 miles round trip. Every day. I try to do that only 3 or 4 days a week and 1 day out in the field. The truth is that a straight line from where I live to Trenton is half that amount. The roads just don't go there, okay? Because the roads were built to go from Washington to Philadelphia to Baltimore to Princeton, to Trenton and up to New York, and for goods and services. So that's how I have to commute. And not efficient. Not efficient. You might think that it's a little bit odd to have the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles address this conference. This is not my first conference to talk about the new cutting-edge ways to be more efficient in transportation, because, as I said, motor vehicle commissioners around the country realize that the landscape is changing. After all, as a motor vehicle commissioner, think about it. One of my big jobs is to collect money from all of the licensed drivers, whether it was in New York State or in New Jersey, and all of the registered vehicles. So do I have an interest in reducing that amount? Well, that's not really my battle. It's just my battle is to collect that funding. Now, that amounts these days to about $1.2 billion a year in New Jersey. But the secret, just like it is in New York, is motor vehicles doesn't get to keep that money. A big chunk of that money goes to the general fund to support other entities, other efforts, whether it's transportation, DOT, or environmental protection, where you might not have the same resources. There is a disconnect in governments, state governments. I'll tell you a little inside story in New Jersey. We're very concerned about the environment, particularly how vehicles impact the environment. We work obviously very closely with the Department of Environmental Protection in New Jersey. We run the emissions program, but it's really, I always ask myself, why are we running the emissions program? In New Jersey, the inspection program for vehicles is really all emissions now. We eliminated the mechanical inspections, except for commercial vehicles, except for taxis and the like. So it's really emissions. It really should be under DEP. They're not willing to take that right now. And I will tell you that in New Jersey, at least, we run at a deficit. Okay, so even if you think in New York State, when you go and get your car inspected, you go and you pay, you go to your local garage, you pay. In New Jersey, it's a hybrid system where you can go to a centralized lanes run by a private entity that the state contracts with, and it's a money loser for motor vehicles, substantially. So not only do I have to run the program that it's not my program, it's really a DEP program, but I lose money on it, my department. So the goal is constantly to reduce the cost of the emissions program, right? And I mention this because we have a new emissions RFP that's out on the street. An award has not been made. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Some other things that you may have, where you see the worlds colliding. Anybody here hear about the Tesla? Hear about Tesla vehicles, right? Great new technology. We license car dealerships in New Jersey. That's part of our responsibilities. Well, we had a little problem, and we're not the only state that's had this problem. We initially licensed Tesla dealerships in the state of New Jersey because under Title 39, everything was fine. We had no reason to not license them. Differences, and obviously the technology. Who disagrees with the technology? It's great. Good, more eco-friendly vehicles, kind of snappy-looking cars. If anyone's ever tried them, I recommend it. They're very nice-looking vehicles, a little expensive for my public salary, but excellent vehicles. And I could tell you, in the time that they were properly licensed in New Jersey, I never received one call about somebody complaining about the Tesla dealership, 2 Tesla dealerships in the state of New Jersey. The problem was that the way they sell vehicles was colliding with the existing law in the state of New Jersey that has nothing to do with Title 39, which is what I enforce. It had something to do with franchise law. And when that was brought to my attention by who else? Anybody want to venture a guess as to who might object to that? Car dealers. Regular car dealers who have to deal, they don't sell cars directly. Manufacturers in the state, or in most states, don't sell directly. They sell through franchise dealers who get their territories, and they're very protective of that. So car dealers were not objecting to the technology. They're not objecting in fact, they want to sell these type of vehicles as the technology gets better and better. What they were objecting to was that a manufacturer can come in and sell directly. What their concern is, what happens when Toyota decides to do that, or GM decides to do that? Then all the dealers are out of business. What we ended up having was a conflict of law and of existing laws, and frankly, we had to pull the license and wait for this to get resolved by the legislature and the executive. And it was kind of fascinating to watch because, everybody was punching on motor vehicles. Oh, look at your anti-technology and your anti-environment, and you guys have your head in the sand. Well, that's not really true. We are big proponents of the new technology. We see the future, but you have to, in many ways, government and existing laws are behind the times, and sometimes it's going to take these battles to clarify that. So that was the issue that we had with Tesla. Our issues solely involve business operations. Tesla can now sell directly to consumers, unlike more traditional car dealerships, and we anticipate that was a small carve-out. That's going to grow, and traditional car dealerships are going to get more and more into that business as well. New Jersey now has approximately 8,000 electric vehicles on the road and more than 78,000 hybrid vehicles on the road. There are also nearly 5,000 natural gas vehicles registered as well. And for those drivers who are doing their part for a cleaner future, we've also implemented on the state level several programs over the past few years to reward them, to incentivize others to buy those type of vehicles that are better improve the environment for all of us. So in New Jersey, you have an emissions test exemption for green vehicles. All new 2009 model year and later passenger vehicles or light-duty trucks weighing 8,500 pounds or less are required to meet California Low Emissions Vehicle Program standards under what is known as LEV, or Low Emission Vehicles Program. The LEV program reduces vehicle emissions, helping to reduce adverse impacts that these emissions might have. So these vehicles are being exempted completely from the emissions inspections process. That's a big addition for customers. As I mentioned, we have a new inspection program starting in New Jersey. We put out an RFP. These programs are long-term programs, 10 years, with major investment by the state and garages. So what do we have to do? Again, we have this kind of clash between DEP and motor vehicles. We want clean air just like everybody else does. DEP wants to buy a Cadillac program for emissions inspection. Motor vehicles, as I explained before, it's costing us money. We want to do whatever meets EPA requirements. That's the reality. So that's kind of what happens behind the scenes. DEP and motor vehicles kind of fighting about what kind of program is going to go forward that meets federal requirements, but reduces the cost of the program to the state and to the consumer. So what we have proposed, and again, we don't have a vendor yet, hopefully there'll be an announcement soon, but the changes that we are proposing will eliminate the previously mandated tailpipe emissions, where they actually have to test right from the tailpipe on older vehicles. We are moving to onboard diagnostic testing. And why are we doing that? Because the older vehicles that are slowly but surely coming off the road. That group only represents that require tailpipe testing, only represents about 10% of the vehicles that we currently inspect on an annual basis. That's about 3% of the vehicles registered in New Jersey, and the failure rate for those inspections has held consistently at about only 13%, with some of the older vehicles going as low as 4%. So again, there's somewhere between an 87% to 96% of these older vehicles are passing the test without a problem. And the good news is, as I said, little by little, they are slowly but surely being pulled off the road anyway. We're losing about 3,500 of the 200,000 vehicles in that class. About 3,500 are coming off each year. So as I'm starting a new emissions program, obviously I don't want to the state invest in all this extra equipment, which is expensive, or the gas stations that do testing invest in all this as the vehicles that would require those testing is diminishing by 3,500 a year. I can guarantee you the garages in my state would protest that. So. We're able to easily and conveniently test and accurately test using onboard diagnostics for the vehicles that are on the road. One of the biggest advantages, and I'm sure you saw it in New York and all over the country, is the Cash for Clunkers program, right? Getting all those old vehicles off the road. That was a tremendous incentive. You can actually see that. You see less and less of those type of vehicles. That 2009 federal program removed approximately 700,000 gas guzzlers from the road across the country, and New Jersey was in the top 10 nationally. So that had a significant impact. Our state, New Jersey, we're not a big state geographically like California or New York, but we are the most densely populated state. We've got a lot of people in a small piece of geography. We had additional impact on that because 84% of the consumers traded in trucks and 59% purchased passenger cars as their next vehicle. The average fuel economy of the vehicles traded in was 15.8 miles per gallon, and the average fuel economy of vehicles that were purchased were 24.9 miles per gallon. So you had a 58% improvement. Dramatic. And again, the older cars are coming off the road every day. Now, we're now in an age where our smartphone can connect to your car's onboard diagnostics and provide you with an in-depth analysis of what's going on in your vehicle. What New York City DOT's Drive Smart program and apps like Dash are just starting to change the game. It's clear that programs like this are going to be saving citizens and even government entities money and resources in the not-too-distant future because these are going to be replicated all over the country. Modern manufacturers and entire automobile industry, they're doing their part, recognizing an obligation to a cleaner future. No longer are eco-friendly vehicles just about saving money and gas. It's a new way at looking at cars in general. And in fact, an interview coming out of the recent automobile show here in New York stated motors can take off faster than gas engines. Hybrids can power wheels with both electric and gas motors with far better acceleration. Electrics are also far quieter, and with fewer moving parts, they're much more reliable. So you're going to see this grow. As I go to the Jersey Shore outlet mall near my home, the last time I was there about a week ago, there's a full battery of charging stations for vehicles. And you're seeing them more and more at the rest stop areas throughout New Jersey. This corridor between Boston and DC is prime for this type of vehicle and for these charging stations. Some of the other things that we're doing is we have a Green Pass discount for New Jersey Easy Pass customers. New Jersey offers a discount for full off-peak tolls, the New Jersey Turnpike and Garden State Parkway for vehicles that obtain at least 45 miles per gallon and meet the California super ultra low emissions vehicle standard. All somebody needs to do if you have one of those vehicles is register with the Turnpike Authority. You have HOV lane exemptions for hybrid electric vehicles. I don't think a lot of people know about that, but if you have one, you have that ability. We have tax incentives for New Jersey's fuel-efficient drivers, zero emissions ZEV sales, and the sales and use tax provides a sales and use tax exemption for zero-emission vehicles, which are vehicles that are certified pursuant to the California Air Resources Board zero-emission standards for the model year. These are vehicles that are specifically certified by our Commissioner of DEP. We also have a penalty, a surcharge, for vehicles that aren't particularly fuel efficient. So if you will get an additional surcharge if you own or purchase a vehicle, a new or leased passenger vehicle with a sales price or lease price of at least $45,000 or a fuel efficiency rating of less than 19 miles per gallon. We also have, just like in New York, idling restrictions, and where you really see this for vehicles and commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles, you see this enforced, maybe not throughout the state, but certainly in areas like Hoboken and Jersey City, where the municipalities know the law and they know that this is affecting quality of life for the citizens in those areas, and they aggressively enforce that, and good for them. This is particularly important. I have struggled with asthma my entire life. Growing up in New York City, always living in urban areas, this is something that does impact people with breathing problems, and frankly, people develop breathing problems, obviously, because of the particulates that are put out through vehicle emissions. Now, we're seeing for the first time in our history words like autonomous vehicles and smart driving cars. I know that this conference is really talking about the full spectrum of transport, particularly in the urban environment, right? We want people to walk, but you want them to walk if it's safe, right? You want to create, as you're planning redeveloping areas, you want to make sure that you've got good areas that are safe for pedestrians, that bike lanes are built in, that traffic calming devices are included on the roadways, right? Those are all things that if you don't put them in, when you're redoing an area, it's going to be tough to do it on the back end. You want to build in plans like the bike sharing programs that are in New York and in other cities around the country and in cities in New Jersey. So these things are, some of them are organic because the public wants them, but they don't happen. They don't just spring up. They happen because people in government, whether it's in motor vehicles, in DOT, NYSERDA, wherever, they actually make a commitment that this is what we're going to do. We're going to try and improve the quality of life for citizens in a particular area or throughout a jurisdiction by including all of these things that we know makes the quality of life better, not just because it makes it more livable, but because it makes it more healthy, right? So the other side to this, and before I get to that, I want to comment about two different things: the self-driving cars, smart driving cars. This is the cutting edge. We're not there yet, but we're almost there. and I know Dr. Kornhauser is here. I don't know if you probably heard from him earlier. We've dealt with him he's one of the leading folks in this area with Princeton University. Kind of leading the charge in New Jersey. We are participating with him and hopefully getting New Jersey to go down this road as well. I would say that the leaders currently in dealing with my colleagues in California and around the country are really California. My colleague Gene Shiamoto, the Motor Vehicle Commissioner there, working with their state DOT, with the private companies that are funding some of this research, and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, et cetera, and also Iowa. They're really leading this. Now, that doesn't help if we don't share information, right? So conferences like this are extremely helpful, but I want to tell you that AMVA, my association, yes, there is an association of motor vehicle commissioners. You can imagine how exciting those conferences are. But they really are, particularly with this new technology, and we all know it's going to impact our world. So not only are motor vehicle commissioners talking about this and how something like a self-driving car or smart cars are going to impact us and get us thinking about how our laws are going to have to change, or laws and regulations are going to have to change, but we also have started the conversation with our colleagues at AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials organizations. So that we're now in I think May, we have another meeting coming up. We already had one where the board of our organization meets with the board of AASHTO to talk specifically about this and bring in our federal partners to talk about this, because it's not just the NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, but it's also transportation of goods and services. It's Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's got to be part of that. And all so that we're all at least speaking the same language and looking towards the future, which is approaching rapidly. Now, before I conclude, one of the hats that I wore when I was Commissioner of Motor Vehicles in New York was you're Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, but you're also head of the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, Highway Traffic Safety Committee. And that's not a small responsibility, because that's something, if we're going to have these shared roadways where pedestrians feel comfortable walking, where bicyclists are free, where it's more accessible for people with physical disabilities, people in wheelchairs, people in scooters, et cetera, if we're going to have those roadways, then you can't lose sight of the fact that the roadways get more complicated, particularly obviously with vehicles. It's a much more complicated environment out there. And so things like traffic calming devices have to be part of this. What's the other complication that everybody here knows, all right? You got cars, you got bicyclists, you got rollerbladers, you got all that, all sharing the same space. What's the latest thing that's happened, let's say in the last 10 years, that's really complicated the problem? Yes, everybody's distracted driving, and not just driving, distracted bicycling, distracted pedestrian, right? And that is a growing problem. It's, we have a campaign in New Jersey. They doubled the fines, thanks to the legislature. You don't often hear this. The governor's office and the legislature actually agreed on something. Hallelujah. And they double the fines for texting and driving and cell phone use. And it's graduated to the point where you could lose your license. Now, nobody wants to do that. This is kind of like the seatbelt use law and DWIs. You have to use. We're trying to get the enforcement and the education. And the legislature was smart enough in crafting this law to take a portion of fines and give it to motor vehicles to help educate the public. And that means incorporating, don't text and drive, just drive, focus on driving when you're behind the wheel, on our testing, on our manuals, and also allowing us to do public service announcements. And we are doing that. Social media. So I encourage you, please, two things. To check out our njmvc.gov, that's our website, njmvc.gov, or our Don't Text and Drive website, which is justdrive.com. And there you can share experiences, observations. We use that kind of to exchange information with other governmental entities, private sector entities, et cetera, and the public. So it's justdrive.com. I also would encourage you to check out our website for our commissioners, motor vehicle commissioners website, which is AAMVA, AAMVA.org, because there is a specific category there, a library, for information sharing on autonomous vehicles. So if that's an area that you're particularly interested in, please check that out. And also, they've got some great information, and it's a very, very, very good organization. With that, I think I've used up my time, but I want to thank you all for including motor vehicles in this conversation, because it's going to take highway traffic safety professionals, it's going to take the private sector, it's going to take academia, and it's going to take organizations like motor vehicles to make our environments, our highways safer, more efficient, and more environmentally friendly. Thank you.